Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This is A Matter of Justice, Part 2. What? And there was an eon of hostility in her words. We were escorting a prisoner, Mitch explained, ignoring the she-elf's anger. And what is he to me? She was in charge of a dust running gang, Mitch told her. You've heard of them? Tell me. Dust runners capture pixies and burn them until only their dust remains. The she-elf paled. This prisoner, where is she? We don't know. She escaped while we were putting out the fires. We will find her. Is she dangerous? Apart from the fact she really hated pixies and isn't too good with elves? Nah, Schaefer put in. Winsome is just fine. Mitch didn't have time for sarcasm. Yes, and she'll become irrational around pixies, elves, and unicorns. Unicorns? Vestrian had returned, and there was real fear in his voice. Crap. We need to capture her, Mitch said. She was due to stand trial in Sydney tomorrow. And is she responsible for this? The she elf gestured toward the downed aircraft. Airplane, the male elf filled in. Yes. Is she? Schaefer saw the denial forming on Mitch's face, and then saw him grow still. I don't think so, he said. But, the she elf pressed, someone else might have crashed the plane in order to kill her. Sorella's eyes widened, and she glanced at the gathered passengers, her gaze resting on the children nestled among them. Vestrian laid a hand on her shoulder, but when Sorella returned her gaze to the officer, fury was etched in every feature. We will find her, she said, and forestalled Mitch's thanks with an upraised hand. But if she commits a crime against our people while on our land, she'll face our justice, and your trial will no longer be necessary. Now, Mitch started to protest, but Vestrian shook his head, and the officer subsided. It will be quick, Sorella offered, her lips curving into a mirthless smile. I know where there's a troll bridge. Schaefer watched her superior's mouth open and then close and then open again. She reached across and laid a hand on his shoulder, and Mitch managed to close his mouth without letting a single word escape. Instead, he took a deep breath and gave the only acceptable answer. Fine, he said, although they all knew it wasn't, and then swiveled slowly on the spot. What do you suggest? I said we would look for her, Sorella said. You and your second in command will ensure the good behaviour of our other guests. Schaefer glanced over at the passengers and then the pilots. As she did so, her gaze passed across the plane and she walked over to the pilot. Is that safe to go inside? She asked, and the man shrugged. Apart from the fact we have no way of getting to the doors? He asked. I don't think it's going to explode. Good. We'll need supplies from inside. I'll speak with the. Schaefer hunted for the right word with which to describe the she elf and settled for the lady in charge. She left them, hearing Mitch's assurance that the elves were bringing food as she made her way back to Sorella. The she elf was standing close to the trunk of a gum tree, her head canted forward and lips moving as though she was deep in conversation with someone Schaefer couldn't see. Schaefer let herself be momentarily distracted by the she elf's curves before focusing on the task at hand. When she was a couple of meters away, she stopped, but the elf kept speaking. Which way? She demanded, and Schaefer wondered if the woman was talking about their missing prisoner. She strained to hear the reply, but the speaker was speaking too softly for the officer to hear. Without realizing it, Schaefer took a step forward, and the she elf shifted, partly turning toward her. How long? She asked, and again she was not addressing the paranormal squad officer. Schaefer held her breath, but she still could not hear the reply. She was close enough, however, to watch the play of emotion over the elf's face. It ran from steady concentration through hastily concealed alarm to something that Schaefer could only describe as bleak. Instead of asking Schaefer what she wanted, Sorella turned to her and said, She's heading for the grove. Can I come? You know the Dryads have a preference for men. All the more reason for Sergeant Harris, to remain behind. The she-elf regarded her for a long moment, and Schaefer returned her stare without blinking. Finally, Sorella's lips twitched. I take it you do not, she said, and Schaefer felt her face heat. No, she said quietly, but I doubt the dryads will care. Sorella looked on the verge of saying something else, but then she jerked her chin toward a small group of elves that had emerged from one side of the crash site. They waited patiently in the shelter of some snow gums, watching the gathering of humans with caution. My people, Sorella said, we tend to avoid humans. Schaefer wanted to ask if she would be welcome, but refrained. It made no difference, welcome or not, she was going, and Mitch was not, which reminded her. The flight attendants need to access the plane. Another thought struck her. If there was some way the passengers could return inside, it would solve the problem of shelter for the night and the need for toilets. I thought your emergency services were coming. It will take time, Schaefer said, and some of the passengers will want to relieve themselves before then. Iriel, Sorella called, and one of the elves who had been standing by the plane strode quickly over. The humans need to be able to get inside the. She glanced at Schaefer. Aircraft. Aircraft. Make it accessible for the night. Yes, my lady. Schaefer watched as he sketched a quick bow to Sorella before hurrying off to inspect the plane. He was as slender as most of the elves, but there was a wiry musculature that Schaefer watched as he sketched a quick bow to Sorella before hurrying off to inspect the plane. He was as slender as most of the elves, but there was a wiry musculature that warned of hidden strength. He wore his dark hair long, but that wasn't what drew her eye. Schaefer stared at him a moment longer. Too long, because Sorella noticed. That is my brother, Sorella said. You find him attractive? No, Schaefer blushed. Yes, but not in the way you mean. He reminds me of something, but I can't think what. Or who? Sorella pressed, and Schaefer glanced at her. Who? That felt right. It could be who, she admitted, but I can't connect it. He has a half sister who left us when she was in her teens. She swore vengeance for the loss of her friend. Her name was Vayala. Perhaps you've seen her? No. But how was she lost? Schaefer asked. The friend? Schaefer nodded. She was human. Viola met her when she attended high school in the town. She didn't like our way of life, so we tried to make her ready for a more human life. She was going to leave us anyway. We told her not to bring her friend into the forest, that it wasn't safe, that the unicorns did not approve. The unicorns? Sorella shrugged. The unicorns have a way of telling if someone will be their friend or foe. They did not trust the girl Viola liked, and we would not allow her onto our lands. It could be the unicorns could smell pixie dust on the child's clothes because we later learned her family was tied up in the trade. We did not know Viola shared their secrets, had not thought she would be so foolish. Spiteful, Iriel had returned. I have no illusions about my sister. She was angry because she was not fully one of us or fully human. She thought it unfair to be caught between two worlds and not part of both. She blamed us for being what she was. Schaefer didn't know what to say and was grateful when Sorella replied. I am sorry, Iriel. I can have the passengers back in the plane within the hour. Who do I speak to? The sergeant and that hostess, Schaefer pointed. Tell him I suggested we use the plane as shelter for the night and see what the hostess says about the toilets on board. It would also mean the passengers have access to their luggage and other electrical devices. She paused. Although I'm not sure if that's a good idea. If someone else brought the plane down, then letting them know it's still in one piece might not be the best of plans. Too late, Vestrian had returned. I've radioed emergency services. They're very happy to know the aircraft is in one piece. I asked them not to disclose the location so we're not inundated by worried relatives. Nor the press. Sorella was silent, absorbing the information, Schaefer thought, watching the she-elf's face. Beautiful. She was jolted from her admiration when Sorella spoke. Vestrian, coordinate with the sergeant and emergency services. Iriel, go with him and see how they want to use the aircraft. We need to have them secured by nightfall in case of trolls. You, she continued, looking at Schaefer, come with me. She did not wait for them to obey her words, but turned toward the elves waiting beneath the snow gums. We do not have much time. I do not think your sergeant will approve. Schaefer was almost certain Mitch would not approve, but they were partners. With him handling the passengers and emergency services, one of them had to be with the team searching for Winsome, which reminded her, what happened to Viola's friend? Again, it was Iriel that answered. She arrived on dusk. One of her brothers dropped her off at the truck stop, and she crossed the fence and walked straight into the forest. Viola was waiting to lead her to the Dryad's Grove so they could join in the dancing there, but the unicorns scented them. They were almost at the snow gums, so Sorella paused. She looked at Schaefer and took a deep breath, taking up the story where Ariel had stopped. They chased the girls to the river and then along it. It was early spring, so the water was up as it is now, and the two of them went in. Viola said she thought the unicorns were going to kill them. When we later found her, she was clinging to a log trapped against the bank, but there was no sign of her friend. Sorella started walking again. We searched for days, and Viola for weeks, but we found no sign. Viola never forgave us and left for human society before the end of the year. I don't know where she went.